Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I never promised anything, she once told me. Her words return now, as I stand by the kitchen table, staring at the open box of her belongings. It's a simple cardboard box with the flaps folded back, revealing clothes, a hairbrush, perfume bottles carefully wrapped in tissue, and all those small traces of her life that she once scattered around our home. I don't remember precisely when I started collecting these items. Maybe it was after I realized everything had changed, that there was no going back. Maybe it was just a quiet compulsion, some part of me needing to compartmentalize her presence. All I know is that the box is here, and so am I, and her voice echoes in my head, calm and merciless. I never promised anything. I close my eyes. The day I first heard those words, she said them in passing, almost as a joke, talking about some old college flame who apparently wanted too much from her. She shrugged, that little hat smile on her face, and sipped from her latte like it didn't matter. I remember thinking, this woman is honest to a fault. But honesty can be a strange thing. It can be the most deceptive shield if you use it right. I pick up a bottle of her perfume. Light floral notes drift up, and for a moment I'm 25 again, standing in that coffee shop the first time we met, enthralled by her laughter. Her name is Rebecca, 35 now, slender, graceful, determined. A marketing manager with a mind for strategy and a flair for persuasion. She always approached problems with a relentless positivity that both inspired and unnerved me. But in this moment, that bright presence feels distant. The quiet in the house is absolute. I place the perfume back into the box. My hand trembles, and I let out a slow breath. We used to share everything, or so I believed. Sometimes I think I gave her more of my soul than she ever offered in return. Then I remember that scrawled line I found on her phone's notepad. Should I tell the truth or remain silent? It was enough to unravel my peace, because I suddenly knew. My name is Michael Williams, and I have discovered my wife's betrayal. Outside, the sky is that colorless gray you get in Seattle on a lazy afternoon. The neighbor's dog barks somewhere down the street, and an engine hums by. The rest of the world moves on. Inside this living room, time feels stuck. I pick up the phone she left behind last night, her old phone, the one I stupidly used to check her alarms or random notes. One accidental tap, and her secrets flashed in front of my eyes. But the real revelation happened weeks before, a revelation I never wanted. It was an ordinary Thursday evening. I'd been working late, finalizing a financial analysis for a big client. My job, ironically, is to comb through spreadsheets and find hidden anomalies, patterns that don't add up. That night, I came home to an empty house. Rebecca had left me a text. Working late, don't wait up. It should have sounded normal, except she'd been using that line a little too often. The next morning, I saw something in her eyes. Something guarded. She was wearing the same perfume I now cradle in my palm. Then she slipped away for work without a single goodbye kiss. Days passed, each one with small, almost invisible clues. The way she kept her phone face down at the dinner table, the hushed phone calls she took in the driveway, the distracted manner in which she'd respond when I asked about her day. I'm not a suspicious man by nature, but I felt a chill in my gut that I couldn't shake. It reached a boiling point on a night that still plays behind my eyelids. I dozed off on the couch, lulled by the late-night news. A strange noise woke me, like footsteps on the front porch. Then the door opening. Quiet giggling. Shadows on the wall. I rubbed my eyes, trying to gather my senses, and I heard her whisper, "Shay, he's asleep." She didn't realize I was right there, just a few feet away in the darkness, breathing softly. My heart pounded in my chest. Her voice was low, playful in a way I hadn't heard in months. I listened to the click of her heels on the hardwood, the rustle of her blouse as she moved. A man's voice responded in hushed tones. They were stepping around me carefully, heading down the hallway toward our bedroom. By that time, my pulse hammered in my ears so loudly I could barely think. I should have burst out, confronted them right there. But I froze. I literally sat there, my entire world tilting off its axis. I couldn't get my body to move. A minute passed, 2 minutes, maybe more. Finally, I forced myself up off the couch, legs shaky. I followed them quietly. They left the bedroom door half open. And that's when I saw everything. The man, tall with a lean build, tanned arms that flexed as he touched her. Later, I would learn his name, David Brooks, a product manager at her company. She wore a sleek black skirt and a blouse that was half undone, and he was kissing the side of her neck with a hunger that made me feel sick. My wife moaned softly, her voice thick with desire. They didn't see me, not yet. I could have turned away, but I didn't. I stood there, paralyzed by the reality that had crashed down on me. He slid his hands under her blouse. She arched her back against him, and I felt a coil of rage tighten in my gut. I caught the reflection of my own face in the bedroom mirror, my eyes wide, mouth slightly open. I hardly recognized myself. I witnessed my wife hooking her fingers into his belt, tugging him closer, breath hitching as she pressed herself to him. The bed creaked under their weight. I heard the urgency in her whispers, the quiet sound of lips meeting skin. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to do something, to shout, to tear them apart, to demand explanations. But I was locked in a numb hush, as though I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. They moved together, lost in each other, unaware of my silent presence at the doorway. When she whispered his name, a broken sound escaped my throat. My legs felt ready to give out. There was an almost surreal intimacy to it, a rawness that gutted me. It was not just physical. There was something else, a closeness I hadn't seen between us for a long while. An emotional betrayal unfolding before my eyes. I finally forced myself to step back. My hand clutched the doorknob so hard I thought it would snap. I retreated down the hallway, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. In the living room, I just stood by the couch, listening to the muffled sounds of their passion, feeling like a ghost. I'm not sure how long I stood there. Maybe minutes, maybe an hour. When the noise subsided and I heard them moving, I slipped out through the back door, into the garage, my old sanctuary. I spent the night there, hunched over my workbench. My father's tools hung on a pegboard, half-finished wood projects scattered around. I sat in that dusty air, heart thudding, and I realized something deep and cutting. Everything I believed about trust, about my marriage, had shattered. In the preceding months, I might have guessed she was drifting, but I never imagined this. Once you witness that stark picture, it etches itself into your mind forever. Around dawn, I heard the front door open and close again, presumably him leaving. Then I heard the shower running inside. The first rays of sunlight crept through the tiny garage window, and I noticed the neat row of old family photos pinned to my corkboard next to a black and white group shot from a corporate event, featuring employees of her company. And there he was, David, standing next to her in that snapshot, both of them with polite office party smiles. I stared at his face until my eyes burned, until I couldn't see straight. That was the morning I printed out a larger version of that photo, just his face, and tacked it up on a spare piece of plywood. I told myself it was just to blow off steam. But something in me had died during the night, replaced by an emptiness I had never known. I hammered nails into that plywood, slowly, precisely, through his eyes, his mouth, his slick corporate haircut. Each blow rang out in the garage, echoing in the early quiet. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was the only thing that stopped my hands from trembling. The last nail sank into the center of his smile. Later that morning, she found me in the kitchen, sipping black coffee. I expected her to panic, to come up with some pathetic excuse about working late, but she just looked at me. I said nothing. She said nothing. There was no apology, no confession. She walked up, placed a kiss on my cheek like we were living a normal day, then turned and left for work. I went back to the garage and hammered more nails. That became my nightly ritual, I told no one. I didn't call my friends or my parents in Oklahoma. I just carried on, day after day, with that dead feeling inside. She and I existed under one roof, but we rarely spoke. Every so often, her phone would ring, and she'd disappear into a different room to answer it. I didn't confront her. In my mind, I replayed that scene in the bedroom. Each memory cut deeper than the last. Then, one night, while she slept in that bed we used to share, I rummaged through the house and found an old portable speaker. I recorded a voice note on my phone. There was a lie here. 5 words. I looped it. I placed the speaker in the kitchen, set the volume low, and let it play over and over. Sometimes she'd wake up and wander out, looking confused, or maybe unsettled. I'd pretend to be asleep on the couch. She never turned it off. After a few nights, I wondered if she understood the message. Maybe she told herself it was about something else. Maybe denial was easier than facing the truth. Weeks rolled by. No more midnight visits from David. At least not that I witnessed. But her eyes grew distant. We moved like strangers through the house, half acknowledging each other's presence, half ignoring the truth. Occasionally, she'd try to act normal. Want to go out to dinner this Friday? Or, should we buy new curtains? I'd nod, grunt, or say something monosyllabic. Inside, I was already done. The nails were in place, the photo pinned, the phrase echoing in the kitchen each night. I was preparing to leave. I just didn't know when. My job kept me busy enough. Numbers and charts were a small comfort. At least they didn't lie to my face. But every time I left the office, that dread settled in my chest. Going home felt like stepping into a tomb where love had died, replaced by unspoken guilt. Yet I couldn't muster the energy to explode, to cast blame or shout. My heartbreak manifested in a silent, methodical resentment. It was nearly a month after I caught her with him that she finally cracked. A cold evening, the sky dark and heavy with rain. She'd just come back from a supposed business meeting, reeking of tension and stale coffee. I was in the living room, standing by the big window that faced our front yard. The lamp's warm glow lit half the room, leaving the corners in shadow. I heard her soft footsteps on the hardwood. She must have seen the box. I'd left it on the couch, half packed with things she'd strewn across the bathroom and bedroom. Slowly, she placed her purse on the table and walked closer. Her hair was damp from the drizzle outside, framing her face in limp strands. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "Michael." Her voice cracked. That was all she managed, my name. I kept my gaze on her, face blank. Inside, my pulse hammered. But on the surface, I was ice. She knelt beside the box and ran her hand over the contents. A scarf, a makeup bag, random trinkets. It looked like she was about to say something, but then she spotted the folded photo on top. At first she didn't realize what it was. Then she recognized his face. Her mouth parted in a silent gasp. That was my cue. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a second photograph. An even clearer shot of him from that old corporate event. I tossed it onto the table next to her purse. Silence. She turned whiter than paper. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. In that hush, I whispered, "Look familiar." She swallowed, tears pooling in her eyes. Michael. She couldn't finish. Instead, her lips began to quiver. I stepped forward, my footsteps slow and deliberate. "Don't say anything." "Not yet." Then I nodded at the image. "Just look." She stared at it for a long moment, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then she broke down. A sob, raw and sharp, filled the stillness. She pressed the heel of her hand to her mouth as if trying to stifle the sound. I stood there, watching, feeling strangely detached. The voice in my head repeated, "There was a lie here." "I never wanted this to happen," she managed between sobs. "I swear, I never. I gave a slow shake of my head. "No, don't insult me with that." My own voice was eerily calm. "Let's not pretend you didn't have a choice." Her tears fell harder. She sank to her knees, hugging the box as though it could shield her. "I didn't promise anything," she whispered, echoing the line she'd used so long ago in that coffee shop. But this time, the arrogance was gone. It was a wounded sort of admission. I thought maybe you didn't care anymore. We grew so distant, Michael. And David, he was just there. I didn't know how to stop it. I was lonely. It took every ounce of restraint not to shout at her for blaming me. But I stayed silent, my jaw clenched. Her sobs rattled in my ears. Part of me wanted to reach out and hold her, to recall the early years when her tears would have melted me in an instant. Instead, I let the moment pass. She doubled over, face buried against the box of her belongings, muffling her crying. Finally, after a long minute, she spoke again, voice hoarse and trembling. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. Michael, please, talk to me." I stared at her hunched form, at the shimmer of tears on her cheeks. There was a knot of pain in my chest, but it was knotted so tightly it wouldn't unravel into words. I bent down slowly, picked up the photo, and placed it carefully back in her trembling hands. "This is yours," I said. My tone was measured, almost lifeless. "It belongs to you. So do the lies." She squeezed her eyes shut, new tears trailing down her face. "I messed up, I know. I should have told you." "Should have told me what?" I asked, stepping back. "That I'm not enough. That you found a better man. That you just slipped into bed with him one night." She shook her head violently, guilt and shame contorting her features. "He's not better than you. I was just lost. And he paid attention, he listened. I felt seen, and I know how that sounds. But stop." I raised a hand, and she fell silent. A thick wave of pity coursed through me, but it was overshadowed by numb resentment. "I know exactly what happened. I don't need more details. I was there, remember." She flinched, horror dawning on her face. "You saw that night?" I nodded. "Once. All of it." Her eyes widened. She placed a hand over her mouth, trembling anew. I could see the realization sinking in, the shame twisting her insides. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Instead, she wept, raw and uncontrollable, hugging the box to her chest like a lifeline. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared. The rest of the city was carrying on with life, while we stood in the living room amid a storm of heartbreak. The lamp flickered, as if uncertain whether to stay on or plunge us into darkness. I turned, walked to the window, and stared out at the wet street. She continued to cry behind me. "It's too late," I said quietly. "Don't you see that?" She tried to speak through her tears, something about therapy, about trying again, about how people make mistakes. But I'd heard enough. I imagined that bedroom scene for the 1,000th time, her moaning his name, the press of their bodies. The memory still drew blood. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply. Without a word, I walked into the kitchen, retrieved the small speaker from a drawer, and placed it on the table in front of her. I pressed play. My recorded voice spilled out into the air, soft but resolute. "There was a lie here. There was a lie here. There was a lie here." She stared at the speaker, tears dripping onto the box in her lap. Her head shook in disbelief. "Oh God," she whispered, sinking further into herself. "Michael, please, I never wanted to lie." I flicked the speaker off. "Yet you did." Another moment of silence enveloped us, broken only by her ragged breathing. "Now pick up that box," I said, voice shaking just enough to reveal the rage beneath my calm. "Pack whatever else you need. I can't have this conversation again." She wiped at her cheeks, mascara smearing. No, we can fix this. We'll talk about it. I'll end everything with him. You won't even." I cut her off with a flat laugh. "You're telling me that now? What about all those nights you left me alone, thinking you were busy at work?" What about the day you brought him into our bedroom? My fists clenched. Rebecca, I'm done talking. She began to sob again, reaching a trembling hand toward me. I stepped away, not roughly, but firmly enough that she withdrew. Then I turned and left her kneeling there on the floor, the photo and the speaker at her feet. I spent that night in the garage, the nails hammered into his face glinting under the single overhead bulb. Part of me wanted to tear them out, fling the board across the room, smash everything in sight. But I simply stood there, arms hanging at my sides. I realized I no longer felt the savage satisfaction from driving nails into his photo. The anger was overshadowed by something heavier. Resignation. Sometime around 3 in the morning, I went into the house to get a glass of water. I found her sitting at the kitchen table in darkness, hugging the box. The rest of her things were scattered around. She barely moved. When she looked up, I saw a hollowness in her eyes that almost mirrored my own. But I brushed past her without a word. I set the glass in the sink and returned to the garage. As I closed the door, I heard a quiet, choked sob from her. That was the last time we spoke that night. The next morning, I woke early, even before sunrise. My body ached from sleeping in a chair, but I forced myself up. I rummaged through my closet in the bedroom. She was asleep or pretending to be. As I packed a small suitcase, I kept it simple. Some clothes, a toothbrush, phone charger. The essentials. Then I zipped it up and stepped toward the bed. She lay facing the wall, back turned to me. I paused, noticing how fragile she looked, curled under the sheets. My heart twisted painfully, but not enough to stop me. "I'm leaving," I said softly. No response. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she was awake and terrified to speak. I didn't care to check. I went to the living room, found her phone on the coffee table, face down, as usual. I flipped it over and saw a string of messages from David. My stomach lurched. But I turned away, leaving the phone where it was. By the front door, I glanced around the house one last time. The furniture we'd picked out together, the framed wedding photos, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the hallway. Pieces of a life that now felt like a distant dream. On the small shelf by the door, I saw the speaker again. I'd left it there, silent. It felt like a silent witness, perched on the edge of everything. She appeared behind me then, in her robe, hair disheveled, face blotchy from crying. She looked at the suitcase in my hand and blinked in panic. "Michael, wait." I turned the doorknob. She reached out, grabbing the sleeve of my jacket. For a moment, we locked eyes. Her lips trembled, and tears threatened again. "Don't do this," she whispered, voice rough. "Let's talk. Please, we can try." "Goodbye, Rebecca," I said, pulling free from her grip. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The morning air was crisp, and the sky was streaked with pale light. My car was parked on the street, dew clinging to the windows. I walked down the path, suitcase in tow. My heart thundered, tears threatening to burn my eyes. But I kept my head up, face stoic. No meltdown. I refused to break down. As I slid into the driver's seat, I spotted movement at the front window. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, the robe slipping off one shoulder. Her eyes followed me, silent pleas etched in her expression. For an instant, I thought about everything we built. 10 years of marriage, memories both good and bad, her smile, her perfume, the little jokes we used to share. Then I remembered the nails hammered into David's face, the moans I heard that night. The pain overshadowed everything else. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I pulled away from the curb, leaving her and the house behind. My mind felt numb. The sun rose higher, lighting the wet pavement. Each red light, each intersection seemed to last an eternity. But eventually, I reached the freeway, heading south, away from the wreckage. Hours later, in a cheap motel off the interstate, I dropped my suitcase by the door and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked older, lines of exhaustion under my eyes. My reflection gave me nothing but a hollow stare. At last, I sank onto the stiff mattress, phone in hand, and stared at the blank screen. I had no idea who to call or what to say. My life as I knew it was done. My mother once told me that a man's true test was how he handled betrayal. I used to think it meant rising above and forgiving, or finding some heroic path to redemption. But in this moment, I feel neither heroic nor forgiving. I feel vacant. Betrayal is not just a wound that heals. It's a slow poison that seeps into your bones. It's a betrayal of everything we built. The trust, the illusions, the daily rhythms that gave me a sense of purpose. I close my eyes, and I see them again, her arching her back, him pressing close, their whispered urgency. My stomach knots. Yet I don't rage or cry. I just exist, as if outside my own body, watching an empty shell of a man come to grips with his new reality. Part of me wonders if I'll ever feel anything else again. Night falls. The neon sign outside flickers against the drawn curtains, painting the walls of the motel room in a dull pink glow. I take out my phone and scroll through old photos. Birthdays, vacations, random selfies. She's smiling in most of them, wearing the scarf that now sits in that box. There was a time when I felt like the luckiest man alive to have her by my side. But now, each image is a small dagger, twisting in an open wound. I open the notepad app on my phone, stare at the blank screen. Slowly, methodically, I type. Should I tell the truth or remain silent? The same words I once found on her phone. I chew on my lip, considering them. Then, in a moment of impulsive clarity, I delete the line and type something else. There was a lie here. I shut the phone off, drop it on the nightstand, and let my head fall back on the pillow. The silence is absolute. No humming of a fridge, no traffic noise from the freeway. Just me and my thoughts. A deeper emptiness seeps in, as though I'm finally acknowledging how far gone we are. Tomorrow, I'll find a new place to stay, maybe call a lawyer, figure out the steps to finalize the separation. The mere thought of divorcing her should make me cringe, but everything inside me is so cold, so hollow. I imagine telling my father about it, hearing the disappointment in his voice, or maybe he'd be proud I walked away, stood up for my dignity. Then again, maybe he'd just be sad for me, sad for the life I lost. A swirl of possibilities flickers through my mind. My eyes drift shut. Sleep creeps in, broken by flashes of memory. Her tears, my nails hammered into that photograph. The slow hiss of betrayal that clung to the air in our home. Then images of normal days. Cooking breakfast, going to the movies. Kisses hello and goodbye. The contradiction is overwhelming. Hours pass in restless half-sleep. When the red glow of the alarm clock reads 3:17 a.m., I jerk awake, heart pounding. For a moment, I expect to see the speaker in the corner of the room, repeating that phrase over and over. But there's no speaker here, just me and these four drab walls. I slump against the headboard, pressing the heels of my palms against my eyes. My mind runs circles around the same painful truth. Everything is irrevocably changed. She betrayed me, and I walked out, leaving her behind with nothing but heartbreak and a box of her own lies. Deep down, I wonder if I'll ever find it in me to forgive her. Not for her sake, but for mine. Because I know that holding on to this bitterness is like swallowing glass, yet the image of their bodies entwined scorches my memory. Forgiveness seems impossible. Eventually, dawn edges in through the curtains. I rise, wash my face in the stained bathroom sink, and decide it's time to leave this motel. The cost of another night is pointless. My mind is set on continuing south, maybe back to where I grew up in Oklahoma, or maybe somewhere else entirely. I throw on a wrinkled shirt from my suitcase, splash some water on my hair, and walk out. The air outside is crisp and smells faintly of damp pavement. The drive is mechanical. The highways blur, each exit sign passing like chapters of a life I've abandoned. I keep the radio off, letting the hum of the engine fill my ears. My thoughts drift to David. I picture him discovering that I know that I hammered nails into his face. Maybe he'll feel guilty, maybe not. Some men can justify anything if it brings them pleasure. That's between him and his conscience, if he has one. Sometimes I catch a reflection of my own face in the rearview mirror. The expression is hollow, eyes set deep. There are lines around my mouth I don't remember having a month ago. Betrayal ages a man, I suppose. The day stretches on, with occasional stops for gas or a black coffee to keep me awake. And through it all, I keep imagining what Rebecca might be doing. Maybe she's sobbing in the house we once shared, or maybe she's calling David for comfort. Perhaps she's cursing herself for her mistakes, or planning some last-ditch attempt to salvage what we had. The reality is, I don't care, or at least I don't think I do. That well of compassion inside me feels bone dry. By late afternoon, I find myself in a small town that looks like it belongs in another decade. Wooden storefronts, a single traffic light blinking red. I pull into a diner's parking lot, the old neon sign buzzing overhead. My throat is scratchy from too much coffee and too little food. Once inside, I slide into a vinyl booth near the window, my suitcase still in the car. An older waitress with kind eyes hands me a menu, but I barely glance at it. My mind is occupied with the swirl of regrets. She returns a minute later with a cup of coffee. I sip, wincing at the bitterness. Across the aisle, a middle-aged couple laughs quietly over a shared slice of pie. Their hands intertwine on the table. My chest tightens. Once, not so long ago, that was me and Rebecca. Just an ordinary couple in a diner, content with the simple presence of each other. Now that memory feels like an alien life. The waitress asks if I'm ready to order. I mumble something about eggs. She scribbles on her pad, walks away. Then, from the corner of my eye, I see a family photo taped to the wall behind the cash register. Parents, kids, grandparents, all smiling. It pierces me with an unexpected ache. I think of the old photos pinned on my corkboard, the snapshot of David among her coworkers. The nails hammered through his features. I let out a shaky breath, and for a second, I almost feel like breaking down. But nothing happens. My eyes stay dry. When the food comes, I force myself to eat, though it tastes like cardboard. My appetite is gone. I pay the bill and step out onto the sidewalk, the late autumn sun casting long shadows across the pavement. I realize I have no real destination. Part of me is tempted to keep driving forever, but I know eventually I'll have to stop, maybe find an apartment, start the tedious process of building a new life. I reach into my pocket and fish out my phone, checking for messages. Nothing. A part of me expected a flood of missed calls from Rebecca or some frantic text. But there's only silence. Maybe she's accepted it too, or maybe she's giving me space. Either way, I tuck the phone away and stand there, feeling an odd emptiness. I recall the first time I saw her, in that bustling coffee shop near campus. She was wearing a blue sweater, sipping a latte, flipping through a magazine. We made eye contact. She smiled, a smile that made my chest flutter. The memory stings now because I see how that bright moment led here, to this lonely sidewalk in a forgotten town. Without much else to do, I climb back into my car. The seat is warm from the sun. I check the time, 3 in the afternoon. Driving aimlessly might not be the best idea. I could find a place to stay for the night, maybe write an email to my boss explaining I need time off. My mind flips through the possibilities with a dull sort of efficiency. As I start the engine, I notice an incoming call. It's an unfamiliar number, same area code as Seattle. My heart bangs once. It could be her, using a different phone. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Hello. Silence on the other end. Then, a hesitant male voice. Michael? I set my jaw. I recognized that voice from the night I heard them whispering. David Brooks. My stomach twists with hatred I thought I'd numbed out. What do you want? I say flatly. He exhales shakily. Look, man. I'm sorry to bother you. I just needed to talk. Rebecca's not answering my calls. I found out you left. My grip tightens on the steering wheel. You're sorry. Sorry for what exactly? He takes a moment. I can practically hear him wrestling with guilt or fear or both. I never meant to hurt you, or her. It just happened. A cold laugh escapes me, startling me with its bitterness. You never meant to. You broke into my life, used my wife, and you didn't mean to cause damage. I care about her, he says, voice strained. I'm not calling to defend myself. I wanted to make sure you're okay, in some sense. Rebecca's worried about you, and You have no right to worry about me. I snap. My voice shakes with rage. You destroyed my marriage. I watched you two together. Saw it all. You think I want your pity. He's quiet for a few seconds. I hear him swallow. I know I screwed up. But let's be honest. Maybe you two were drifting apart and my anger flares like a wildfire. Don't you dare blame me, I hiss. Don't you dare tell me it's my fault you slept with my wife. A pained sound echoes through the phone. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, relationships are complicated. And I want you to know that if you need anything, or if you want me to back off completely, that sets me off. I slam my hand against the steering wheel. Back off? You think there's something left for you to cling here. You want to play the hero now. He murmurs something I can't make out, then says quietly, I'm sorry, man. I really am. I'll leave you alone. And he hangs up before I can respond. I sit there, breath ragged, phone still pressed to my ear. A scream coils in my throat, but only a strangled cough comes out. Furious tears threaten, but I choke them back. My body trembles, a violent aftershock of the anger the conversation unleashed. For a moment, I consider driving back to Seattle, confronting him properly. But what good would that do? I might punch him, might break his nose, end up in jail, or worse. Then what? The emptiness remains. Eventually, I let the phone drop to the passenger seat. I grip the steering wheel, resting my forehead against it. A low groan escapes me, a sound of pure frustration and heartbreak. Then, with a surge of determination, I straighten, shift into drive, and pull out of the diner's lot. My path is uncertain, but I know one thing. I can't turn around. Not yet. Maybe never. I merge onto the highway again, ignoring the uncertain swirl in my chest. Each mile marker that flashes by feels like a small release from the weight behind me. By early evening, I find myself on the outskirts of another city. I don't bother to learn its name. I just check into a modest hotel with a monthly rate. The clerk at the front desk barely looks at me, hands me a key, and points down a dim hallway. The room is larger than the last, with a battered old couch and a television that probably hasn't been updated in decades. I drop onto the bed, letting my gaze drift over the empty walls. I fish out my phone again, half expecting a message from David or Rebecca. But there's nothing except a single text from my boss. We need your final report by Monday. Everything okay? I type a quick reply. Family emergency, might need a few days. Will send what I have. That's it. I turn the phone off before I can think too hard about whether I want to keep my job or not. Night creeps in once more. Rain patters against the window. I rummage through my suitcase for a fresh t-shirt and slip it on. Then I lie back, listening to the drip of the faucet in the bathroom. My mind travels back to the countless nights we spent together, Rebecca's warm body next to mine, her slow breathing that used to lull me to sleep. Now I have only an empty bed and the memory of her betrayal. I wonder if she's alone in our house, or if David is there. I wonder if she's replaying our final conversation, crying herself sick. A part of me wants to find a shred of pity for her, but all I feel is a quiet sense of finality. I saw them. I heard them. There's no unseeing that. The nails have been hammered in place, figuratively and literally. At some point, I drift into a fitful sleep, In my dreams, I'm hammering nails into an endless row of photographs, David's face repeating over and over like a twisted reflection in a hall of mirrors. Rebecca's voice echoes from somewhere, calling my name, but I can't see her. The hammer falls again and again until my arms ache. When I finally jerk awake, drenched in sweat, it's morning. And so it goes, day after day. I keep to myself in this anonymous hotel, only leaving to buy groceries or coffee. Sometimes I open my laptop and stare blankly at the spreadsheets I'm supposed to finish. My mind is a tangled mess. I try to focus on the columns of numbers, but the memory of that night always resurfaces. My chest throbs with an ache that never quite subsides. About a week later, I finally turn my phone back on. There's a flood of texts and missed calls from my boss, a handful from my parents, and exactly 3 from Rebecca. Each of hers is a short, pleading message. "Michael, please call me. Where are you? I need to talk. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this." I ignore them all at first, letting the phone screen go dark again. Then guilt creeps in. Not guilt for leaving her, but guilt for leaving my parents in the dark. I call my father. He picks up on the second ring, voice warm but concerned. I can't bring myself to say the words, "She cheated on me," yet. I just say I need time, and he offers a quiet acceptance, telling me to come home whenever I'm ready. Days slide into weeks. My new default is solitude, a steady hum of numbness. I finish the project for work and email it off. My boss wants me back, but I ask for a leave of absence. He sounds worried but grants it. Meanwhile, the calls from Rebecca slow to a trickle, then stop. Maybe she's finally accepted it. Maybe she hates me for walking away instead of fighting for us. If so, she's free to hate me. I won't chase a love that collapsed under someone else's hands. One early morning, my phone buzzes again. This time, it's a message from her. "I understand if you don't want to speak to me, but I just need you to know I'll always be sorry." Simple, direct, the words of a woman who finally grasped that she can't undo what she's done. I stare at that message for a long time, feeling something twist in my gut. Then I delete it. Weeks later, sitting in the battered hotel armchair, I realize I'm done punishing myself with her memory. I paid the bill through the end of the month, but I might leave earlier. The future is a blank slate, but at least it's mine. Maybe I'll find a quiet rental house somewhere in the suburbs. Maybe I'll move back to Oklahoma for a while, reconnect with old friends. I haven't decided yet, and that's okay. I picture the nails hammered into David's photo. That raw, ugly act was my way of coping with the betrayal. Now, I wonder if there's a better path forward. Some version of me who can let go of the anger without letting go of his own worth. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday. For now, I gather my things, pack them neatly in my suitcase. I take one last look at the drab hotel room. The walls are as blank as the day I arrived. Pulling my jacket on, I flip off the light and walk out the door, leaving the key on the nightstand. The corridor is dim, and my footsteps echo on the worn carpet. Outside, dawn has barely begun to brighten the horizon, but I feel a faint sense of relief in the cool air. I put my suitcase in the trunk and slide into the driver's seat. As the engine turns over, I realize I'm breathing easier. The last few weeks were a crucible, painful, humiliating, emptying me of so many illusions, but I survived. I might be battered and raw, but the road ahead is open. I pull out onto the quiet street. The city is just waking up, lights flickering off in small houses and apartments. A crisp breeze shivers through the trees lining the avenue. Up ahead, a lone traffic light flips from red to green, signaling me forward. I ease down on the gas. A memory surfaces. "I never promised anything," she once said. I hear the echo of it in my mind, but I don't feel the same sting of heartbreak. Maybe that's progress. Maybe, in time, I can leave her words behind entirely. Right now, the only promise I care about is the one I make to myself. To keep driving, to keep living, until the day I find something like hope again. And if that day never comes, at least I'll know I walked away with my dignity, carrying the truth of who I am without compromise. I press on, the rising sun flooding the windshield with a soft amber glow. Each mile that passes, each faint hush of the tires on the asphalt, feels like a slow exhale, releasing a fraction of the weight in my chest. I won't say I'm healed, but for the first time in a very long while, I feel something besides numbness. It's a quiet, fragile sense of possibility, and that for now is enough.